Hello and welcome to Upstage Downstage.
With me, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And me, Stephen Rees, seated in a cheap seat. This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen, things we've liked and may not have liked, giving our complete unprofessional and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew, take a seat and let's raise that curtain. On today's edition of Upstage Downstage, we'll be discussing Billy Elliot, which we saw on the 3rd of August 2022 at the Leicester Curve. So Stephen, what's it all about?
It's the mid-80s. Thatcher is at her most powerful. Men mine and boys box. Until, in a small town in County Durham, a young boy falls in love with ballet. Set amidst the increasingly bitter 1984-85 miners' strike, Billy Elliot, the musical, is a tale of determination, acceptance, and daring to be different. Based on Stephen Daldry's acclaimed 2000 film, with music by Elton John and book and lyrics by Lee Hall.
But first, our post-show opinion!
A stunning new adaptation of an existing musical.
Masterpiece of theatre.
So with all that said, let's
set the scene. So Richard, we went along to see Billy Elliot, the musical, at Leicestershire Curve. So as we took to our seats, which we were quite high up, weren't we?
Yeah, we were up at the back row of the...
Best circle? Or
well, it's just really... I suppose it's not really the circle, it's more of a balcony and there's stalls, so there's not really more levels than that.
Right at the top, at
yeah,
the back,
yeah,
basically.
At the back.
And what did we see? Could you describe the set for our listening viewers?
Well, when you walked in, you were instantly hit with atmospheric smoke all around the building. Almost, I think, to feel like coal dust in the air industry. And all that you had on stage was a big British Coal standard issue sign that just said Billy Elliot the musical. So you were almost led to believe that there's a lot more going off on stage than there's. They just kept it very hidden. Very similar to what we've seen at Leicester Curve before, where you don't really know what you're going to see because they tend to make sure that the stage is fully blacked out
it's
before
not
you
revealing,
get there.
Is it?
No, they don't reveal a lot until you watch the production.
Yeah, it gives the impression of like a documentary, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It
like,
doesn't. Yeah,
this is what you're going to watch.
It feels very 80s, very set in its time, very specific. I mean, one thing you could see just off to the left and right of the stage were scaffolding pieces up at the sides with more British Coal signs, your warning signs, things that you'd normally see on a factory or a coal mining site or those sort of things.
Yeah, you coal not dole signs and stuff like that, which
yeah, just the things that you'd normally see around in that era.
But then once that disappears and we cut to the actual stage, we were presented with an unusual stage, and I say this because it was like we had 4 stages, but one of the stages was like a stage on top of a stage on top of a stage. So it was a 3-tiered thing, which actually you researched, didn't you, Richard? And what was it?
Yeah, it's one of the pit heads from the old 80s mines, and basically they recreated the house for Billy Elliot that Billy lives in out of this 3-storey pillared building that is basically a copy of a monument to the mining industry. So it's still there today. There's a lot of documentation out there, so it's just a nod to the history of coal mining, really.
Yeah, and also behind that but to stage left were the band, wasn't it? The orchestra.
Yeah,
it was basically up in the air.
On scaffolding.
And I think, when you were talking about your weekend in London with the cabaret, I understand now, after seeing that, what you meant by the orchestra being like above the stage.
Yeah, definitely. It very much feels like the band are integral to the production and they're part of the piece. And in a way, it's quite a bare set stage, in a way. There's a lot of scaffolding, metal work.
Mesh nets.
Mesh nets. Almost portable mesh nets that you'd see around a basketball site or a football area in an inner city football tarmacked area that has got mesh round it, and almost the fencing around a coal mine, really, to stop any intruders getting in and out.
Exactly, and I think
because of safety.
Yeah, they doubled up for different rooms as well, didn't they? And they had like little
and it was quite. I mean, it was quite
utilised. They utilised the space.
Yeah, they utilised the space. But what you also saw was a lot of hazard tape around. They didn't hold back on hiding any of the markings they had on the floor and things, because that also felt like you were almost in the building above a coal mine before you went down underground. So everything had hazard tape stuck to the floor. All the entrances and exits had that as well. So in a normal production you'd hide that, but for this it worked because that's what you'd see in those areas for safety, and I think they were very faithful to keep that in there, really.
Yeah, and I would like to point out that when we were last at the Leicestershire Curve, we went to see the homecoming, and we sat at the very back, but it was on the stalls, and we made a comment of the actual set being quite high.
Yeah.
And I can understand why it was now from the top row right at the very back, because there's an awful lot of space that you can still see.
Yes, definitely.
Right at the top, like they had the flag coming down, and the orchestra. Now, where we would have been for homecoming, we probably might not have seen as much
exactly.
of the orchestra, but they really do utilise that word again.
I was using it.
You use all the space, not just around the sides, around the back.
I think
on
they confidently used
up in the air as well.
as part of the production. They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't shy away from the top of the stage, and I think that's important to mention.
Definitely.
Even from using the top floor of the house, they used it quite a lot, and it drew focus from the main downstairs areas up to the top. But then also you felt remembered as an audience member sitting right at the back row at the top of the balcony. You almost still felt welcomed into that performance because you didn't feel like you were disadvantaged in any way. And I think
it's
that
sort
was
of
important.
zoned in.
Yeah.
You didn't really look at like the orchestra or people on the bottom of the stage. You just zoned into so many meters above the setting on this little
Definitely. Yeah, really.
square bit. What was it, like 3 meters by 3 meters or something like that?
Yeah. It's not a big piece of staging, but it was enough to. But it was on a movable track, so basically they pushed it forward into the space, right into the centre of the stage, right up to the front of the performers, so you could see it and you felt part of it. So I do feel like they used that really well to make you feel that you were in there, really.
Yeah, and I must say hats off to the actors that actually got to perform right at the very top, because this is higher than the actual bandstand that was.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was getting vertigo just watching them just dangling from the very top bit.
There was no clips. There was
safety
just
harnesses or anything.
Simple safety rail wires that were there to stop, to just remind them that they're that high up. But there was nothing. They weren't hooked on or anything. So they were, they were fearless when they were up there.
They were definitely that.
Because that's like standing on the roof of a house that was that high, really, in height on the stage. That was like being on your own house on the top of the roof.
My legs will just go to jelly. Just I wouldn't have been able to do it.
No, totally understand.
No, you don't know. I might have done.
Well, you could have done.
I wouldn't have done.
Your legs would be shaking.
Exactly, like jelly. Now, moving on. Let's talk about the directing of this. And who was it directed by?
It was directed by Nikolai Foster and choreographed by Lucy Hind.
Okay. Now, what did you make of their artistic work?
I think they did really well in this, because this is actually a revival. So Billy Elliot was in London and toured the country quite a lot way back when in the West End. So this is actually because the musical was written, the book and lyrics were by Lee Hall and the music was by Elton John. So basically this production has got a following. However, to revive it and do it in a new way, because I have seen the original in London, so I had got a contrast to refer it to, and this production is very different in conviction to the one in London. So it was actually good to see the two versions to see how they contrasted. But I do think it was very well directed and put together, because if you're going to revive something, you've got to be confident in the way you do it rather than drawing reference from the previous, because you can get compared very easily and very quickly if you don't have confidence in your own performance and your own direction of it, really. And I thought it was really well done.
I thought it was just slick all the way through.
Yeah.
Every moment of moving like you say about the cage, moving that in and out of focus. You've also got the use of the stage, the amount of pictures and the actors, and I say pictures, I mean like the actors being the pictures and stuff on the outside of the lines. And when you've got the actual the yellow cages, which doubled up for the ballet class and then the boxing ring,
they all became community halls, and
Yeah.
it became the picket line, it became the entrance to the mine, to the pit, and it was like just changed so much that.
Oh, and also what I forgot to mention is not only did they use the space above, they used the space below, because they brought the miners up from the bottom as well.
Yeah, and they only used that for when the miners entered and
exited
back
down.
the mine, really. And that was really clever, because that then drew focus to that, the depths below, because people forget that, mining is, you're literally underground for so long. I mean, I've got tales from my my granddad, who was a miner, who used to go underground for hours and hours on end and come up, need to get washed, get a suit on, and get down to the pub and get dressed up in his fineries because he's spent all day down a black hole. And you don't always realise that until you see this sort of production, that's the dank, dark world they live in. You know, it becomes a culture. So I think they did really well in giving you that essence of performance when you saw them go down into the hole.
Yeah. What I get from this is just the whole stage, the whole atmosphere was electrifying.
Yes.
It was dramatic.
Yeah.
It touched upon everything, and it was just gripping. And I think this was the only play that I've ever seen where, apart from the Book of Mormon, which we've just covered, where I was actually leaning forward, leaning into it. I was hooked. I was gripped. I wanted to just take everything in.
I think they got the rawness right,
Yes.
where you felt like it was real. There was something about it that felt gritty, and they didn't polish it up. There was no shininess to this. It was even every scene felt in the world of a northern town that was almost everything felt covered in soot and coal dust, and that's what those areas were like. That's what the areas of coal mining were. They weren't clean. You know, you could probably write your name on the windows in most places. You know, in people's houses and terrace roads, you felt that, but with so little on stage, and it's hard to describe unless you're in the room. But it felt like there was so much there with not a lot.
It was just so busy. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I think that's probably why I leant forward, because I was taking everything in. I was looking to the left, looking to the right, looking up, looking down. And whereas when we saw Homecoming, that was a different kind of a play, but it was like you were taking everything in because it was dialogue heavy.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas this was
specific dialogue that had to be delivered in a way and be directed in a way to drive the storyline, really.
It was a different kind of play, but I mean, it was more like there was a lot more going on, whereas Homecoming, there was less going on.
Yes, of course.
You know,
it was a static location rather than... You know.
Whereas, you know, this was just... I couldn't wait to see what happened next. And every scene was different. You didn't see the same set twice, I don't think.
No,
even when you went into the boxing ring or the ballet thing, they always did it differently.
They played
different
it.
shape, or they did it on the corner, or it was just gripping to watch, and the direction of it all was just it was flawless.
Yeah, definitely.
It really was.
Totally. Yeah.
As for the writing, it's just a classic piece of writing. Let's face it. And because I've never actually seen the film as well, I know obviously Julie Walters was in it. However, I've never seen.
A musical.
No, I've never seen the original play either. So this was the very first one where I'm coming to it knowing of it, like I did Little Voice and
of
Blood
course.
Brothers. But this is just, I can't describe how just thrilling it was. You know, it was just just
totally
encapsulated everything, and I can't fault the writing. Not like I tried to.
No,
you know,
but you have to look for whether it could be done differently. And I don't think this could.
No, every plot point and everything was ticked off, and it was just every beat was hit.
And every characterisation was strong, as in the characters written in were strong. There was no...
And you saw the struggles, you saw the journey.
Yeah, you saw well, you can use my word this time. But I think that's important. You know, you saw it felt like it was locked in a time frame and a time zone of exactly what happened at that point in that place, and I think that was key.
And it helped as well because we've done a play based on coal mines and that. We actually went to the museum, didn't we?
Yes,
was that in York or?
It's
up north.
It's the National Coal Mining Museum anyway. We went to the National Coal Mining Museum.
Yeah, we actually went into the mine and looked all the way around it and saw where everyone had showers and worked and just the whole life, and we saw people picketing and videos of it and all the memorabilia and everything. So we understood the background of it. I mean, we were born in the 80s, so we were sort of in that period, but we grew up with the aftermath, I suppose.
It's in Wakefield.
We grew up with the aftermath of what happened afterwards, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
But we've actually physically done the research to understood the fears and, you know, what it was like to be called a scab and going beyond, and why the father had to do what he had to do for the kid. And
well, it was also, I think it also highlighted, you learn about, I think this production did also show how much people lost and how much pride meant to them and how much, you know, that yes, they wanted to support the children, but they couldn't earn enough money to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things happening that they wanted to still, on face value, be able to afford things and pay for things. And I think it really showed struggle.
Yeah. And also the struggle with terms of the kind of support you give to a child when that child is turning out to be slightly different
Yes.
than what you expect.
Yes.
Like, I mean...
And doesn't fit the social norms of, of the area.
He just wanted to dance, and he didn't care if he was wearing a dress, and he didn't particularly care if his best friend was gay as well, because that was a sign of the times. However, the family, the parents, didn't particularly view that as a good thing.
No.
They wanted him, the little kid, to be more like them, more manly and butch. And
but I think in the writing, it was really clever how it showed that youth are far more accepting than people with entrenched beliefs and values.
And each youth changes each generation.
And it's really interesting that they didn't hold back on looking at it from that perspective, because there's other productions and there's other films and there's other research in those eras and those times that it wasn't all as clean cut as people think. The North wasn't always as, racist and harsh as people believe. There's a lot more things.
That's more
in there.
stereotype as well.
And I think this helped to unravel the stereotype sometime. Because yes, it started with one edge, but it ended with a completely different way. But I think that was
in
important.
order to tell the story, you have to go back to the beginning.
Totally.
And have the conflict.
Of course you do.
You have to have what it's going to end up start with something completely different.
Yeah, and I think that's confidence in writing, knowing that they come from that place and they've done the research, and I think that's important.
The challenges those characters and many characters and many people and children would be going through.
Yeah, and they showed that challenge and they showed that struggle in the way that Billy Elliot goes through the actual process. The actual musical itself does that, and I think that's really
also
clever.
I'll point out topically that it's actually quite nice that it is being done in today's era, I suppose, because it is more relevant, being slightly irrelevant with the whole mining thing, but the whole, like, the cross-dressing and stuff in terms of the child, but not just any old child. No. The cast was an Indian Asian child, wasn't it?
Yeah, in the production we saw, there was the character that plays Michael at the production we saw was Prem Masani as Michael, which is Billy's best mate in the production, which is it's
a good take on it, because whether this is my own bigoted viewpoint, I'm not quite sure on that. People in that culture, shall we say, I don't believe that they're openly accepting of the gay community themselves, with me coming from the gay community myself as well.
Well, over history, it's not as celebrated or
it's not
as accepted as maybe in other cultures and other societies. So.
And I say maybe it's my bigoted, maybe I'm a bit bigoted in that because I don't know, but I'm getting the impression I'm only assuming that that's what it is.
Yeah, of course.
But I think it was a good decision to showcase that as well.
Yeah, for me, I think like you say, I think it was a shock in a good way.
Yeah, it was.
Because I thought it was really progressive for a family to allow their child to be Michael and be that
overtly camp
and almost
questioning their own sexuality or gender, maybe.
But almost freedom in being Michael, because Michael's a character that it shows that even though Billy's the ballet dancer and wants to progress as a ballet dancer, he's not the one that turns out to be gay.
Yeah.
He is the dancer who wants to just perform, but he's got friends and he's so accepting to anybody because they're just his friend.
Yeah.
And I think that you can't hold back in that performance for it not to have power, because it just wouldn't work. If the Michael character isn't overtly camp and being a free person, it just wouldn't have that power that it needs.
And it's good to have that acceptance of being if it was a straight ballet dancer, shall we say, but have a gay best friend.
Exactly.
That even kissed you or whatever, but then for you to still support that and not go off on a tangent, not be like nasty or horrible or homophobic or whatever, even if your parents or whatever or siblings are showing that kind of hatred, shall we say.
I mean, no spoiler, but I think there's one thing that they couldn't have really done in this production, but the actual film touches on, is when Billy performs his first performance as an adult on stage.
Yeah. Michael
and his boyfriend turn up to watch.
Ah, okay.
So it fast forwards to that that time, and you see that progression.
Yeah.
So this, even though you didn't get that, it still leaves you with that they're going to be lifelong friends. You still get that
Yeah.
that feeling that they're never going to be away from each other, even though their paths are very different. And
Yeah.
I think that's important.
It's like a series of acceptance.
Yeah, it is.
It's like the parents accepting that the straight guy's a ballet dancer,
Yeah.
and acceptance of the straight guy's best friend is gay
Yeah.
as well. So it's quite nice. That
Yeah.
It's sort of like
And it's something to take
washing
away
dolling
that
everything,
actually
isn't
there's
it?
so much more to the rich culture of that any village and any town that you might see from an outsider. Or I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of Londoners that see anything past the M25 as north.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I
yeah,
think
they're
that
very
they have a
insular.
complete different view of northerners, and I think that's a Durham town. I mean, in my experience, I have been to the miners' marches, and I have performed in part of Durham miners' marches over the last quite a few years, and I've stayed in areas in Durham where I've actually seen the culture is not what people expect. It's not all blokey, mates. There's a lot more love and a lot more attention to people just being who they want to be and being supported and allowed to be that. So I think it completely blurs that line that people think is already there.
So now we've gone a bit too deep on this one as well. How about we then talk about... Do you know what we're here for?
I don't know, Stephen. What are we here for?
We're...
Here for the drama.
Right then, let's talk about the acting, because we've got a tremendous cast, haven't we? Really?
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, a lot of the cast are almost...
I only know Sally Ann Trippitt.
Yeah, I
from
wouldn't
the
say
Acorn
they.
Antiques
I
as
wouldn't
Miss
say.
Birth, but-
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're well known.
No.
But their almost majority are jobbing actors and
Yeah.
people that are performing across the country. I've seen a few of them in West End productions as part of the casts, but I wouldn't necessarily pick one out as being somebody that's in major productions. I mean, the only one I could probably pick out is Luke Baker, because he was in the production of Everybody's Talking About Jamie as one of the lead cast members.
Right, okay.
He was Dean in Everybody's Talking About Jamie,
Right.
which is the main bully against Jamie in the production. So it's very interesting how he's playing a very similar role, not necessarily bullying his brother, but it's actually a very unaccepting person in this production too. But throughout this cast, there's not a lot of people that you could probably pull out and say they've been in this and this. And I think in a way, this is the sort of production I love the most, is the fact that I prefer a production with unknown performers in it.
Yeah.
Because you immerse yourself in it, you watch the production for it being a production.
Yes.
You're not
I know
waiting
exactly
for the
what you're saying,
starring
yeah,
role.
yeah.
You're not waiting to stand up and applaud because somebody walks out because they're famous. You just watch it as a whole.
Which is very indicative of how we felt about Cluedo, if you think about it.
Yeah.
The two
definitely.
people we actually knew, Michelle Collins and Daniel Casey,
Yeah.
they actually were sort of, I think, overshadowed by
And they weren't
this
the
whole new
strongest.
cast. No.
No, and you expect with a name for somebody to have that caliber. I mean, this takes me back to watching a production of Guys and Dolls that Patrick Swayze was meant to be in, and because I went to the
You say
matinee,
Patrick Swayze, but isn't he dead?
that's how long ago I went to see it.
Oh my God.
So I went to see a production of Guys and Dolls in London, and Patrick Swayze is meant to be in the production, Claire Sweeney's meant to be in the production, and at the matinee, historically, the understudies take that place. And in the year of the understudy, which I would think we're still declaring it that, I saw Guys and Dolls without either lead cast member. And I can say now that it was like this. It was one of the best performances I've seen, because you just lost yourself in the world of Guys and Dolls. You didn't actually see the star. And when I actually found out that Patrick Swayze was playing the lesser role in the production, you realise that actually he didn't miss anything at all. So, it was amazing just to see the production, because I feel like there's more drive in those sort of productions when they are performing and nobody knows them, but they could be that next star. They
We
could be
don't
the
know
next
who's
in a few years' time.
audience wanting to cast the next Game of Thrones or
You just-
Downton Abbey
you-
or whatever.
You just end up, you could put the telly on and that person you've just seen on stage is there.
I don't know why I said Game of Thrones or Downton Abbey. I'm not really
No,
a
but
fan
it's the
of either.
same. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
but
it is.
It's the guy who plays Sky Madison in Guys and Dolls is now touring at the moment. I think he's still doing Singing in the Rain at the moment as the Frank Sinatra character. So he's gone from being an understudy to now,
Getting wet.
yeah, basically every night.
I won't linger on that. Right, as we're talking about acting,
Yeah.
which we are, aren't we?
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Jaden Shentel Lee as Billy for just being fabulous all the way through this. You know, he just gave such a energetic and strong performance, and because it was such a huge cast, I couldn't really list everybody.
No,
but because he's the main character, I thought he was just superb. Well,
He
the show's
was-
based on him.
well, the show's based on him, but you forget how much he has to perform in this. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of songs centered around him.
But this actor isn't the main actor that's mainly listed.
No, exactly. And I think that was key to... You wouldn't know that.
No,
You
definitely
totally
not.
didn't know that this was maybe the other Billy that doesn't normally perform, but it was like he just...
There was the roughness to him that sort of
Yeah.
suited the era, the grittiness of the coal mines, and not like he went down there, but you know that whole
Yeah, totally.
era and the stage and stuff. So I can't really compare to any other Billys because I've never seen other productions and I've never seen the other younger
No,
adults,
exactly. But
younger actors.
I think as
in
we've
it
seen,
either, but
I mean, we've just reviewed Identical, and I think one of the things we've realised now is some child actors really show there's a future in acting, because certain
Absolutely.
performers, they just... I mean, Billy held his character, but not just that, he held his accent. He stayed in a Durham, Newcastle accent. It was you felt like he was in that world. He never really dropped his character, and there was no moments of uncertainty. Everything he had to do, he did.
yeah.
And I think that was key as well.
I think it goes to show that if you encourage a child actor and allow them to explore certain avenues about themselves and train them,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, because a lot of people just end up growing up, you know, there becomes something in their life where they just get into like a negative situation where they're just told that they're not good enough, or they can't do this, can't do that, and then they start doubting themselves.
Yeah,
and
of course.
the whole, like, they've had like so many years of their life wasted because they've just constantly lived a lie of a doubt which somebody told them.
But also,
that's another tangent I've gone off
well,
on.
I'm
But
going to say, wow. But
I've dug another little hole I'm going to hide in.
One thing I will... I mean, I'm saying a lot of things. A lot of things. I will say that I think with his performances, you know, you can overact sometimes. And I think that, yes, they're in a dance school. Yes, there's an element of having to perform with a smile.
Like a
and
show off.
Yeah. You're meant to do this, you're meant to do that. But even also including the whole child cast in this, even though when you're doing it, there's meant to be tits and teeth and everything, and everybody's meant to be presenting themselves and they're meant to be smiling all the time, I found that even the other child performers had almost had a bit of it stripped away, so they weren't perfect, because there's an element of sometimes where dance schools, drama schools always go for perfection when they perform, but this was almost a failed dance school that was performing okay and people were enjoying it in the area that they lived, but it wasn't perfect. So they did have a few moments where when they had the dance classes, when they were rehearsing, it didn't feel like it was the same performance every time, and it just felt like, but also they all worked as a team, so you felt it didn't feel disjointed, like, oh, there's a different Billy on stage, so we're going to do something different, how we're going to act. It felt like they were all in the moment, and I think that was key from a directing point of view, because you've got different child teams doing this performance, and I think to make everybody gel and become that production, they must have spent a lot of time working with those child actors to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. So Richard, props and costumes, what do you reckon about that? I mean, it was very in keeping.
I mean, it was very 80s, it was very of the time. I mean, it's very mod as the day. I mean, it's very in keeping with the 80s theme. I think there's, you know, the things that the props that were in the house, or the three different floors, felt very in that era, and there wasn't really anything. I suppose there was key bits of props. There was
classic milk bottle.
Yeah, classic milk bottles, classic favourites box. You know, they all felt real. Nothing felt out of place. And I think, you know, there was just a simple piano on stage that was used for more than one scene for the ballet scenes and stuff like that.
And the Christmas.
And the Christmas set was very straightforward. There was lights everywhere, but they felt like they'd been put up by the local area and bunting, and there was props for the Maggie Thatcher heads and stuff like that. That was enough. It didn't feel over the top. So yeah, I mean, it was, you know, and the one thing I will say is the banner that was dropped down towards the end was authentic to the Durham Miners' March, so it was very, very in keeping with the local area that would have its own banner made by the local people that wanted to represent their mine.
It makes me wonder now, with like this whole agenda to go net zero, carbon zero.
Carbon zero.
Carbon zero. it's a cafe near, is had the pits not closed, right, would they be trying to close them now? I
It's
mean,
very interesting.
we've got no fuel. We need the coals that we need that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, you know,
but
feel like we're getting topical, but they have asked for the
pits are open again.
no, they've asked for the power stations that are coal-fired to slow down their closure procedures.
Yeah.
So they delay for the next few years. So it's very interesting that actually coal's still needed now, and it's very...
And it's weird because this whole thing was, so it was 2050, but now they're rushing for 2030 quickly. We're the ones that are sort of suffering at the hands of India and China, who are having power stations building like so many every week. You know, it's...
Yeah, I think as well, I mean, it's also, I mean...
Why do we have to be the first one to be reached
all the
net zero or something?
all the steam-powered railway centres across the country that are all using preserved lines, they're having to ship coal from Australia because it's the only way they can keep the steam engines running, you know, because they can't do the same. So, you know, it's very interesting.
Yeah. And also with this sort of like Maggie bashing or whatever for closing the pits and so on, you know, but how would have that continued if they were constantly either going on strike or couldn't get enough money back then? You know, what's the after effect on that?
Yeah, I think there's loads of questions to ask and answer. And I think there's so many things for and against that it just was
what it was.
It just was, yeah. And I think it's hard to analyse and look back sometimes when, you know.
And also, if you think about it, if mining was in the family, that's all you knew, that's all your life. It's sort of, in a way, open your doors to other possibilities that you never thought. It was just more probably just being scared.
I think I do think it does reflect the areas that there was a deep amount of, there was so much unemployment that there wasn't the opportunity to grab any other opportunities.
Well, exactly, all in one area.
In such a big area of, you know, the whole area relied on mining, and maybe it was an oversight from the government not to have any other industries in those areas, because everything above the M25 in them days wasn't seen as affluent. It was seen as the north, you know, and I think that may have had an effect as well. So, you know, because it wasn't just the coal, it was steel, it was industry in general. Everything was being outsourced and sent to other countries, that because it was seen as cheaper, but it had a dramatic effect on, it created so much depression in so many areas at once. And I think that was the main issue, really, that it took a long time and still taking a long time to recover from, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Do you want to mention any of the songs?
Well, I suppose the songs are, you know, they help drive the production, and there are certain scenes that I think they help with. Things like Angry Dance, the right scene, where we see them use the songs actually power the feeling of the town, as it were, or the miners themselves, and solidarity. And I mean, one of the things I will pick out that we haven't really talked about is Grandma in the actual production.
Yeah.
Which I think shows quite a lot of unexpected performance, maybe, because she was played by...
Well, she was suffering with dementia, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was. Rachel Eisen, who played Grandma, she was suffering with dementia, and she... I just think there was a few things where I think they got the pitch right, where Billy interacted with her quite a lot, and I think those were the moments that just made it a little bit more touching. Or there was some fun little, you know, Grandma's song that basically it created the raw moments on stage where you've got a completely empty stage and just one person, and you wouldn't realise how much it commanded the stage, and it was just really well done. But I mean, most people will know Electricity just because it's one of the main songs that was actually released when this was a musical way back when. So, but I think overall the songs work really well. It's a little thing like these songs drive the production, but they aren't the main focus. The dialogue, I feel, is the main focus of this show more than anything that creates it to be a great production.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with that, because I don't remember any of the songs, but I know they made me feel a certain way.
Yes.
Whereas when we went to see the Book of Mormon, for example, I remember all of those songs.
Yes, definitely.
Because they were like more hilarious, shall we say? That, you know.
Well, they were
kind of
obviously
songs.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The songs were very powerful and great.
What the tack is this?
Now, technical details, Richard. What can you tell me?
Well, I think it was almost a very stripped bare production where they played a lot with shadows, but natural shadows, using light through the set, through the scenery, creating those gobo moments, creating those things on stage without actually using a lot of technical equipment at all. There was no projections.
I thought what was good was when they did the whole... Was it a party scene or something? And...
It was a Christmas scene after the heart.
No, it wasn't that. There was a scene where all the lights were just firing in different directions, and
oh, I know what you mean.
It was all like lit up and like busy, and explosions were going off. I think it must have been the build up to the end of Act 1.
Yeah, I think it was. Was that when they were? That wasn't when they were pushing the things round. That was in the second half.
No.
Well, actually, what they tended to do was some of the scene changes, some of the moves, some of the things that they did on stage. They actually, it almost felt like a rock concert.
Yeah.
Because they dropped a lot of lighting rigs in and things in on pulleys that were just almost just trussing with lights hanging off them.
Well, exactly.
But there wasn't really anything. It wasn't almost overly technical, but it was just moving lights.
Yeah.
It was almost like a disco. But
that's
dropped
what I mean.
in.
Yeah, they just came down and came in, swooped around. But I can't, for the life of me, think what
it was just
what
to add
musical
almost
number that
power
was,
to. There was
yeah.
There was one. It was for electricity, which was the dance scene where it was older Billy performing, and that was
yeah.
To
I don't
show,
think it was that.
No, but then there was the other one where they were moving around the four screens, and they increased it with loads of light and stuff.
Yeah.
Around it. So I think they just used a lot of. It was that to be the right scene that you saw, Angry Dance. That's the one that was.
Oh, maybe then, yeah.
Yeah, that was the one where they brought everything in and dropped everything around to.
Yeah,
just to show. It still felt like almost like they dropped scaffolding in, and everything became. I think this was the simplicity of it. It was all raw. It wasn't. They didn't really hide away from dropping those lights in and things like that.
And the poignant bit was when the miners were going back down, and they were singing as they were going down,
exactly.
and the lights shone from underneath.
Yes.
So you just saw these silhouettes.
Yeah,
as
and all they
kept
had
going
was
down
head
and down.
torches, and they created the light beams just by head torches.
And all you heard were them singing under the stage until the very end of that song.
Yeah, and it was so powerful. And I think
was that the ending?
Yeah, that was the ending.
Yeah,
so they go back down
yeah.
because they go back to the mine.
Work, yeah.
But I think this shows the rawness of it, that it almost felt unsafe, even with those lighting things being dropped down and moved around and dropped in, and everything just felt a little bit on edge. And I think that was the key to this. Everything felt like you like Stephen says, you were leaning forward watching it. It put you on edge, and I think that's because things were moving. There was fast things, there was this, that, and the other, and then there was calm moments. Then it was very much they used a lot of they did it right, because I love it when there's natural shadows on stage or natural light throws, because that's real. It's not something that. It's not like projecting a window through a window frame onto the floor using a gobo that just gives you that light, when actually just put a light behind the window to create the same, sometimes it's all you need.
Now, did anything go wrong? Any technical things go wrong?
I don't think they did.
No, I
Because
don't.
one of the things I tend to watch technically is things like props and stuff like that, when they get put in the wrong place. And I mean, another shout out to Billy. I saw him change his shoes that many times. Yeah. It's a wonder he managed to do all the shoe changes he did, but they, pulled it off. But I think, no, there was nothing. Everything, even the little props, because, I mean, there was a few technical bits where they used... So Tony... There's one scene where Tony gets hit and punched in the face in a fight scene. And they, from a technical aspect, they cleverly hid some fake blood in the back of the house for him to pour down his face to come out from just to give the impression that he'd been hit and he was bleeding and it was fresh blood. And it happened that quick that you didn't even know it was all set up in there. So I think that was really clever, because they didn't hold back on those bits as well. And I think that was important. But they kept it back and held it back right to that point. So
yeah. Now, our new little thing that we're going to add in here, rewatch. What would you rewatch? I don't think we've given it a title yet, but what scene would you like to revisit?
Well, I'd like to revisit the Angry Dance, the Angry Dance riot scene, which for me was really well choreographed, and it was really well made, because it sounds very simple, but you've got 4 screens being pushed around, but you'd got different cast members in different pieces, and they were moving around each other, climbing up it, moving around, and there was songs going off, there was music, and it was just really clever. I just thought, for saying there was so little on stage to what they created, I thought that was the one I'd like to relive.
Yeah. I think I think I'd agree with that as well, because I can remember it, and
Yeah.
I can remember at the time, because this, we're recording
Yeah.
this like pretty much a month later.
Yeah.
So my memory is a little bit hazy, but I remember being really impressed and really like
I think there was
enjoying
so
that
much
in the
going
car
off at
journey
once
home.
that you have to see it again to see it.
Yeah, it was
in
just
its
one of them where it
glory.
was just so alive and so thrilling that I'd definitely see that little clip again. Or probably the one where he's having a bit of a thing above in the not changing rooms, in the it was with the other kid, his best friend.
Oh yeah, that scene in
there
front of the lockers.
Yeah, and they were putting on the dress
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite fun.
That was great.
Cute. But not cute in a weird way. No, so scores on the doors then, please, Richard, for Billy Elliot. With 10 being a professional ballet Elliot and 1 being shafted on the picket line. What's it going to be? I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10, simply because this was just fantastic. But you've got something to compare it to, you see. I haven't. But I remember leaving Leicestershire Curve just feeling gobsmacked, and I was just like, chops in all the way home, chops in outside, just... This was the best musical I'd ever seen until the last one I saw. 10 out of 10 for me.
I mean, to be honest, it's a 10 out of 10 from me because, to be fair, it felt equally as good as the one I saw in London, and that was a different production. And if I can give it a 10 out of 10 again, I will, because it's not based on seeing the other one. The other one was different, in different staging, but equally this had the rawness and the performance that I wasn't expecting in a way. So yeah, 10 out of 10.
So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be?
Well, it can only be a standing ovation, and a very well deserved one because there was a lot of hard work gone into it.
Standing ovation for me too. And I've seen it once, and I will see it again.
But when is going to be the question.
And where and how, I don't know. Although I think I'd probably say, like Blood Brothers, not so soon.
Yes, exactly. Totally agree on that one.
It's a different kind of
Yes.
of wanting to see it again.
Yeah, and who knows, it might get a revival. So if it does, keep an eye out and go and see it.
Absolutely.
So there we are. That's our discussion of Billy Elliot. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Coming up over the next few episodes, we will be discussing The Clothes They Stood Up In
Shawshank Redemption.
and Jekyll and Hyde.
That's it for this week, folks.
If you'd like to drop us a message, please email us at upstagedowstagepod@gmail.com. Remember, you can always join in the chat to share with us your views on a production.
Also, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of Upstage Downstage.